Umurangi Generation is a fantastic photography game that places you in the post-war New Sydney, leaving you to figure out the world and its issues. I've had this game wishlisted on Steam forever, but it actually just got added to Game Pass, and after playing it, I actually bought it on Steam because the Game Pass version had a few bugs, and it was honestly worth the money. Before starting this game, all I knew about it was that it looked like a stylistic, cute photography simulator, but as I went level by level, I was amazed at just how deep and real this game actually was. Umurangi Generation is an important game that I hope more people get to play, especially since it's on Game Pass now. Before I start this video, I want to say that I heavily recommend this game, and I will be immediately diving into spoilers. It's hard to talk about this game without mentioning the magic of discovering its theme and unraveling the story. Playing it after watching my video will still be a worthwhile endeavor, but going in blind would probably be the best way to experience it. It's incredibly worth your time and your attention. Umurangi Generation is oozing in the retro PS2 style with both its design and soundtrack. The OST is fucking bangin' and definitely reminded me of Jet Set Radio's composer Hideki Naganuma. The gameplay loop here is astonishing. You start off with a basic camera, but as you progress through levels you are given more control through different gadgets, lenses, and even more options for the post-processing of your photo. I don't have much experience in these kinds of photography games. I actually just learned that a lot of them exist, and I'm probably going to play more of them. But I absolutely love how they use the real-world mechanics of actual photography, such as changing your ISO, aperture, using different types of lenses, and playing around with post-processing effects. From a pure gameplay / photography perspective, it's really fun to compose your own shots and explore the themes of the world. With your camera, you also have bounties that you have to fulfill each level. You are required to take pictures of certain subjects and use certain lenses. The scavenger hunt trials are engaging and also lead you through the game's story. The gameplay loop with the different types of lenses and requirements for the bounties leads you around the map to explore and soak in the atmosphere. It's a brilliant way of delivering a story through necessity. Yes, you have the objectives to accomplish, but you aren't forced through one set path, and you can go at your own pace. There are actually multiple ways to do a lot of the different objectives, so it's very free form in its delivery. Umurangi Generation's design is pure brilliance. It's a very hands-off approach that lets the players sit with their own perspective and figure things out on their own. The player is put in a space to explore the issues of this society and how it connects to you and your friends. A lot of this is done with environmental storytelling, in which agency is given to the player yet the story is still realized. Its creator, Tali Faulkner, describes the game's setting as a shitty future. The areas here in the main game definitely give off this vibe. You start off at a cute rooftop hangout and slowly progress through military outposts and dystopian districts offering you off-world dreams and selling you UN patriotism. All the areas are extremely fun to explore as they are detailed and rich in environmental storytelling. The world clues you in on exactly what's going on through propaganda posters, media advertisements, and satirical yet oddly familiar rhetoric. Umurangi Generation lets you figure out the story. There is no dialogue, no cutscenes, and somehow, the world is still very on the nose. That isn't a bash on the delivery of its themes, but appraisal. You aren't told the solution or given a secret world-saving attachment to your camera. You, as a photographer, are given agency and creative freedom to explore the space and take photos, to view the world through your perspective, through your different lenses. The game opens up on a graffiti hangout spot where you and your friends are sharing art and music. It's peaceful, but you wonder why there's a giant-ass Attack on Titan wall outside protecting you from goo. In Ultimo Tai, you see military preparations and UN soldiers. You find soldiers regretful of their enlistment and general disdain towards the UN, even from within. You read about some of the UN's failures to protect against a new threat. In KATI, you find a cramped, no-go zone polluted with the noise of gunfire and surrounded with the memorials of those that were lost in the first wave of kaiju attacks. You find dead trees and more anti-UN rhetoric. In the Strand, you're placed on a city street plastered with ads for quick entertainment and the promise of off-world features. On the street over, there's a fallen mech arm with a tired-looking pilot sitting there on the bench smoking a cigarette. Below the district, you find neon graffiti and people enjoying themselves in VR. Afterwards, you return back to Otomotai in the middle of a battle against a kaiju. The whole place is torn up, you see body bags, and your friend providing aid to a wounded soldier. In KARANG AHAKE, you are placed on a train with the survivors and families running along a track of a grim environment. The soldiers are bloodied and tired. The train is filled with fast food and American insignia. You arrive at the metro where you can view citizens lined up at a UN checkpoint seemingly trying to escape. You see more anti-UN rhetoric plastered on enlistment advertisements. You see more ads offering you ways to cope with your kaiju-infested world. As you return to your once chill hangout at the end of the game, you and your friends watch idly as the world ends. Against the bright red sky, you can view 3 large robots fighting a kaiju in the distance. Your hangout is distraught and busy, and the scene is flooded with sounds of distant gunfire. Afterwards, you are brought to a final area where you can view the souls of the Umurangi Generation fly by, and as you stand next to the lost souls of your siblings, you snap your last photo and earn an achievement titled Generational Warfare. The credits roll, and you're left with one poignant message from the creator. Dedicated to the Umurangi Generation, the last generation who has to watch the world die. The title of the game translates into the Red Sky Generation, and it's clear why. Umurangi Generation is about an existential crisis, how the people are kept in line, and how crises breed profit motives instead of actual solutions. This is touched upon by the creator itself, who was personally affected by the Australian bushfires of 2020. One very important thing to mention would be Umurangi's cyberpunk theme. Tully Faulkner describes main cyberpunk tropes as representative of the 80s, and with this game, wanted to make something more representative of today. With 80s cyberpunk, you have general tropes reflective of the era: drugs, racism/discrimination, mega corporations and their power while doing shady back alley deals. Faulkner asks, how do you make a cyberpunk game that is about today? You would include themes of an extinction event that is too late to prevent, fascism running rampant online, militarized cops being a tool of the state, and neoliberalism used to spoon-feed it to you and your family. Faulkner stresses multiple times in different interviews and streams that he didn't want this game to be preachy. He wanted the player to view the world with their own eyes and have their own takeaway from the game. It's important that people didn't just shrug off the game as political or SJW, but instead draw their own conclusions. With how often this game parodies real-world media, I'm really glad he took this approach. The main game stays subtle but definitely still relays its message. I genuinely loved the political and societal commentary this game offered. It had moments that were just hilarious to how darkly accurate it was, and moments where it was genuinely haunting how accurate it could capture our reality. The main game's ending sat with me for about a day until I went into the DLC, which is a 2-week prequel titled Macro. This DLC offers 4 more massive, and I mean massive levels, and absolutely pulls no punches with its storytelling. It fleshes out both the gameplay and the story with new perspectives and mechanics. The first level opens up at Gamer's Palace, a starkly cyberpunk area with a view down on the underground city, with holographic anime women and music being blasted by the Dolphin DJ Tarek. There's a sign with a timer for the current lockdown, and as you walk up to meet with your friends, the music stops, and you're greeted with a droning alarm. There is an obvious dichotomy here, with the underground city being an escape, with those on top having to deal with the death and destruction of the UN's response to the kaijus. The arcade has a bunch of pro-UN media, while the TV above is reporting on the total death count of humans and the collateral damage that is done. You are then brought to a UN hangar, where a very giant mecha is being worked on in Evangelion fashion. The walls are plastered with pro-UN propaganda, with images of heroism and victory, and there's a secret hallway memorial dedicated to thousands of pilots who have sacrificed their lives. In the secret room at the end of the hallway, you can view an infected, broken down mecha with 2 body bags laying by. This symbolizes the immense loss that the UN is facing despite pushing patriotic rhetoric that you saw earlier. Next, you arrive at the depths, where you meet the Rat Queen, the presumed leader of the Depth Rats. You can see a lot of repurposed UN equipment and gear and guides on how to mask your face from facial recognition. You can see a man selling off his last limbs right next to a container selling gun rentals. The whole community is made up of the scraps from the system that failed to protect them. An ad for first wave veterans shows that these people would rather die by resisting rather than by the boot of the UN. Finally, you arrive at a protest that's staged in front of a UN gate. You can see flags, umbrellas to block tear gas, masks to cover faces, and a medical tent. This DLC was released in November of 2020 after a few months of anti-police state and establishment protests all over the world sparked from the killing of George Floyd in May. The scene here teeters on the edge of hope. The money previously earned from photos is now replaced with retweets, showing that you are spreading the message and getting the people's voice heard. The graffiti here are filled with vitriol, the amalgamation of all the frustrations and anger of the world. It's as if the dev himself is letting it all out in the finale of this DLC, a last hurrah to truly get his message across. It is unabashedly anti-fascist, anti-establishment, anti-cop, and I fucking love it for that. When you move forward, it gets quiet. The fake sky darkens, and a large warning is placed telling the protesters to stop. A large mecha peers down at you as the UN police swarm in to stop the protest. You wake up to see the destruction and escape with your friends through a tunnel. I thought the final scene of this DLC was haunting, because we've seen it before. It was almost 2 years ago at this point, but you've seen the protests and the harsh response to them. Let's go back to what I had mentioned earlier about the themes you would hit if you were to make a cyberpunk game revolved around the age of 2020. With this list, you can recognize that the entire game was giving context to this moment, and giving context to things you've already seen in your own life. An extinction event that is too late to prevent. In Umurangi Generation, this is the kaiju. The kaijus cause widespread devastation and have proven to be a difficult problem to overcome for many, many years. Compare this with the issue of climate change today. It's a global issue that our leaders refuse to deal with. Massive amounts of money are used to reinforce dog shit policies that keep corporations safe. These companies then lobby our politicians to stay on top, and worse, the blame is placed on us, with ads telling us that it's our job to recycle and use paper straws, while 100 or so companies are responsible for 70% of our global emissions. Fascism running rampant online. This one stems from the criticism of our world's issues and the brainwashed response to it. Over the last few years, I know you've seen people online straight up deny climate change, promote crazy right-wing conspiracies, and deny cold hard truths about our society. They turn a blind eye to facts and proceed to dick ride a lot of the politicians that sell this to them. I mean, it's fucking crazy. Umurangi Generation features a lot of this same rhetoric. Militarized cops being a tool of the state. You can view how the UN uses its tools and resources to stomp out its criticism instead of trying to fix or protect. I mean, the game ends with a whole list of how much it's spent on the anti-protest response. They have shields, tear gas, I mean they even have a giant mecha they use to tower over the protesters. The mecha that is supposed to be the symbolization of defeating kaijus used against its own people. We've seen the militarization of our police in real time. Even with the BLM protests, you have cops using rubber bullets and tear gas on people holding signs and yelling. You've seen people put more priority on property than human life. You've seen armored vehicles with hoses spraying down people to keep them quiet. A violent response to a protest calling out their violence is not a new topic for us. Neoliberalism used to spoon-feed it to you and your family. I described to you earlier how Faulkner created this game around the time of the Australian bushfires of 2020 because he was personally affected by it. While featured in a stream called Free Play Parallels 2020, He expresses his frustration with the media surrounding the bushfires. You have calls to donate to victims, fire insurance, and disaster response fundraising. But what you don't have is any actual call to action on fixing climate change. No importance is placed on actual policy to fix these issues. Neoliberalism is very good at making you comfortable. You've seen this with the equality posturing from companies all over Twitter. You've seen this with how America still deals with an absurd amount of mass shootings. We send prayers out instead of changing policy. You've seen everything mentioned in this game. These themes and issues are strung along all throughout the game, and the player is spat out at the end like a congealed slug baby to think about it. Umurangi Generation is a very resonant game with my own generation. We've been witness to these issues and have a similar response to what we see in the game. In the face of an existential crisis, you and your friends create and participate in art, take photos to document current events, and spread awareness online. It honestly makes me sad to think about, because in reality, how far have we gotten from the summer protests of 2020? We haven't seen significant police reform. In regards to human rights, we've regressed. The United States has been reverting abortion rights and pushing many bills that affect the lives of trans people and the identity of LGBT folk. Right-wing rhetoric has gotten stronger with attacks on critical race theory and even critical thinking. I mean, we literally have QAnon senators. I think Umurangi Generation does a good job at leaving people aware. I know a lot of people who describe themselves as apolitical, and I can't really blame them with the state of how things are. It's important to at least be aware of these issues, and I encourage anyone who strays away from current events to at least dip your toes into it. Those in power benefit from general widespread ignorance, and that's what makes this game so important. The things you see in this game are not new. They might be repackaged or recolored, but you've seen these themes and topics. Umurangi Generation serves as a reflection and a warning. It's spiteful, dark, but deeply resonant with the people of this age. I am completely enamored with this game. Its visuals, its music, its gameplay, its story. I don't think it's a perfect game, but it will forever be an accurate statement of the 2020s. I've never really talked about political things on my channel before, so I hope that I made sense and wasn't too rambly. Like, I do watch a lot of political content, but I'm not very well versed and I don't do much analysis, to be honest. So I hope it made some sense. In the description, I want to leave some more articles that I read through about this game, in case you want to read from someone smarter than me. And I feel like I also want to link some channels about climate issues and other political issues, just in case that you are interested in learning more about this kind of stuff, because I do think it's important. I'm not very well read, but there's so much content out there that you can watch. Anyways, I'll wrap it up there. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you actually made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.